welcome to a very cold Jim's Allotment garden. Okay, so it's the moment of truth with the ginger. Now, I've not watered this for about a week or so now, so all I'm going to do is just gently tease it out. I've got no idea what this is going to look like underneath, but I'll take the stalks off. That piece doesn't look like it's much good. No, I wasn't hoping for much with that one though. This is the one here that's this one here that's going to be the one that's most fruitful. Now, this is the first time I've grown ginger, and as I explained at the beginning of the year, basically all I did is went to a supermarket and I bought some bog standard ginger, and I planted it in here. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but can you see the core underneath there? So that's, I believe, part of this. So I'm just going to pull that back a little bit. Or was that the original piece I put in? I think that could be the original piece. So I'm just going to get the trowel underneath, see if I can lift it slightly. See what it looks like. Well, that's not too bad for my first attempt at growing ginger. And the one thing you need to remember is obviously fresh ginger is going to taste a lot better than normal ginger. But there you go. There's the actual fresh ginger there. There's the actual plant. So that's typically the bit that you buy in the shop. So I'm just going to just break off the stalk and these roots here. So that's the bit I'm going to be saving. Obviously there's another shoot there coming, but that's not going to. Now, next year what I'm going to do is start it off in the house really early. I'm going to possibly try and start it off in pots. I'm going to get a nice reasonable sized pot, sort of I don't know, about sort of 5-6 inches across, and I'm going to put it in there and then see how it grows. But that doesn't seem to be too bad. I'm just going to break the shoots off. And so, you know, not too bad really, all things considered. Now, all I basically did was bought the lumps of ginger from the supermarket, and I basically put them in the shed. And what you need to do is look on the pieces of ginger, and look for these little eyes here, and they're the ones, and obviously there'll be one there as well, and they're the ones that the shoots are going to come from. So all you need to do is basically put that in an egg box facing up like that, and then you'll find that little shoots, or you know, put it in the light, in the warm, and you'll find little shoots will start to form up here. As soon as you see the shoots forming, then put them in the pot. And then obviously they'll start to grow and obviously put the roots down like this one has here. So I'm most certainly going to be doing it again next year. But what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to cook a nice curry with some nice fresh ginger. Okay, so now the weather's drawing in. It's getting down to sort of 2 degrees at night, or it was last night anyway. And we're most certainly threatened with frost over the next week or so. So what I'm going to be doing is, a lot of people don't bother doing this, But I always worry about the chickens being too cold. Now I actually went to the farm earlier today, and I asked them what they do, and they don't bother either. But I always like to wrap my chickens up so they've at least they're out of the wind. So I don't know if you can see, but I've put some plastic bags over the opening in there, basically, which just allows air through in the summer so they don't get too hot. So that'll stop the drafts into the egg box, which is where most of them go at night. What I'm going to be doing is just stapling some of this bubble wrap plastic around. I'm just going to staple it on a few times. I'm not going to do it too much so I can get it off easily in the spring. And then on top of that, what I'm going to be doing is putting some of this corrugated plastic over the top, which I'll show you. I'm not sure if I'll do that today or later, so it might be in the next video when you see that part. But so I'm just going to basically staple it on just with a standard staple gun like that, just a few times, just to hold it on, and that'll stop the breeze and give a little bit of insulation. And then on top of that, I'll be screwing some corrugated plastic on, just to keep them nice and warm in the winter. And what I do when it gets really cold is I actually put a red lamp in there, so they've got a bit of a heater going on as well. But the other point it's worth mentioning is I always make sure they've got plenty of straw in the run as well to keep the feet warm and that. And so I'll be putting a load more straw in the next few hours as soon as I get around to sorting it out. With regard to the water, the one problem that you do have with water for the chickens this time of year is their basically it freezes so they can't drink. Now all you need to do is get some glycerin. Now most chemists will actually sell glycerin, and all it is a really fine oil. Don't put salt in or anything like that, because that'll potentially cause them harm and they won't drink. So what you need to do is when you're filling up your water, just put literally a teaspoon of glycerin in there. If you go to a chemist and just ask for glycerin, they'll be able to show you, and I'll show you the bottle in a moment. But just put a little bit of that in the water, and what that will do is it'll stop the water from freezing in the winter. Obviously make sure that the food's always nicely topped up, because they're obviously going to need more food during the winter to keep them warm and stuff. But I said to keep your chickens nice and healthy and warm and that during the winter. But what I'll do now is I'll just put the plastic up and I'll show you what it looks like as I'm doing it. Okay, so that's it with the plastic on. Obviously I can't fasten it in too many places because of basically it's the metal framework behind, but that's just there just to basically to stop the draft and just to stop the wind going through and to add a bit of insulation to it. So I've gone all the way around to the door. What I'm now going to do is screw this corrugated plastic on, which is exactly the same plastic as I use at the allotment as the windshield, so it's basically got a double purpose if you like. And what I'm going to do is basically put that onto the frame and then screw it on with just some 1 inch long screws or 25mm screws, and I'm going to put a washer on each of the screws so it doesn't pull through the plastic. Okay, it's a little bit dark to show you, but I just want to show you, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but what it will do is that'll basically stop the wind from getting in and making it too chilly in there for the chickens. But that's basically going to be fine for the chickens to overwinter them, and it's most certainly going to stop the rain getting in and the cold wind and everything like that. So what I need to do is just go through with a few more screws, and what I tend to do is where they join, like here, I'll put a piece of wood behind, just to, like a piece off a pallet or something like that, and screw it together just to hold the pieces of plastic together. I screw them along the top, as you can see here, all the way along the side, and then obviously down each side, and then along the bottom, and then up where the you know, the struts are, just to give it as much strength as possible. And I tried to put a reasonable amount of screws in just to hold it all in, and then obviously in the spring I can just take all that off and it'll be back to normal. But that's just a few tips on sort of try to weatherproofing your chickens, just to give them a little bit more warmth. The one thing that is important is, if you can, try to use opaque or transparent plastic, because what that'll do is it'll allow the chickens to get you know, to still get some light, even though the light will be reduced. You know, it will allow them to get some light, which is obviously important for the chickens. My chickens come out anyway during the day, so they have a run around on the lawn, but obviously at night when it gets really cold, obviously they'll be nice and warm in there for the winter. Okay, so I'll just do a few of the comments that have come over in the last week or so, and I really appreciate all the comments that are coming through, particularly the ones that have come through about the sweet potatoes, because that's going to help me no end next year to grow a better crop than I did this year. But the comments for the sweet potatoes have come from Teresa H. They come from Laura T. Allo White, sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly, and Two Red Birds 1. And the comments for the sweet potatoes is, the first one is to grow them in open ground, because basically as the vines sort of grow out, basically they put down the roots, and then obviously those roots form into the tubers, which are the sort of the red potatoes. Obviously red potatoes aren't actually potatoes, they're a different type of plant, they're actually a vine plant. And I didn't know this when I grew them this year, to be honest with you. I knew they were vine plants, but I didn't realise that they grew off the runners, to be honest with you. The one thing I have found is, because red potato or sweet potatoes aren't grown in the UK very much, I found it quite difficult to find information on how to grow them. So this is invaluable information, most certainly for me, and I hope it's useful to other people as well. The next thing is to grow them in a greenhouse, to give them an early start and a long season. Obviously, sweet potatoes are typically grown out in you know, sort of warmer climates, like in Jamaica and places like that, you know, in the Caribbean, and that's where the, you know, sort of most farms are being grown, and obviously in Africa and stuff like that. So they obviously get a longer season, and also you know, the weather's hotter and stuff. So yes, so what I'll try and do is I'm actually going to try and install a new greenhouse next year, and what I'll try and do is grow the sweet potatoes in there, I think. So basically keep them warm and a constant temperature, and you know, they'll grow a lot better. Don't grow them in containers. You can grow them in containers, but apparently you don't get so much of a good crop, because you only get the ones from basically the root. What you want to do is let the vines run on the ground, and then where the roots go down, obviously, so you want it to grow in open ground, really. I have had some advice also from somebody else this year, and basically they grow them in the UK, and what they do, they grow them in their polytunnel, and they just let them grow everywhere, and obviously that's similar to growing them in a greenhouse. So I haven't got a polytunnel, but what I'll try and do, as I say, all being well, I'll be putting a second greenhouse here next year, and I'll try and grow them in there, as I say. One thing I didn't realise, another tip, is the leaves are actually edible. I've got no idea what they'll taste like, but that's something to try next year as well. And you can cut them back without any too much bother. So if they do go mad and all over the place, you can trim them back or hold them back, and they won't. You know, they don't mind being trimmed back. Harvest the sweet potatoes in August, and then store them for 2 months at 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 degrees centigrade before using. And the last tip is to add sand to the bed to the ground and that will reduce the twisting of the sweet potatoes in the ground. So really good tips. Thank you very much for that. What I'll be doing, I will be growing sweet potatoes again next year, all being well. And what I'll do is, as I say, take on all this advice that you give me, and I hope that's useful to other people. I know in the UK, sweet potatoes is one of those crops that they're not heinously expensive to buy in the UK, sweet potatoes, so really it's more of an experimental interest type of thing to grow them, really, because they are reasonably cheap to buy anyway. But I will most certainly give it another go next year and see if I can get a much better crop than I did this year. What I also may do is make some small polytunnels. I'm not quite sure I'm going to do this yet. What I might do is the tunnels, the sort of the framework that I've got for the strawberries, what I might do is make some similar to that and put polythene over them to make like small polythene tunnels. What I might do is try and grow them in there next year to see how I get on. So either in there or in the other greenhouse that I may put in next year, I'll you know, sort of try and grow them a little bit different to as I've done this year. But again, thank you so much for the tips. The next comment comes from Bill's Allotment Garden. Sorry, Bill's Allotment Diaries, and he was saying that he was moving some rhubarb last couple of weeks, and he snapped his fork off, which is so easily done. I've seen when you're moving rhubarb's got really sort of thick fibrous roots, and they go down probably about 3 or 4 foot in the ground. You know, you can never get all the roots out. What you need to do, or what I would advise you do, is if you ever move in rhubarb, dig round the rhubarb about, well, if you've got an eye in the middle, sort of the plant coming out the ground. Obviously this is the kind of time of year to move it, but go about a foot either side of it and dig down with a spade and chop through the roots. You're never going to get all the roots out, but basically chop through the roots and then try and get the spade underneath. I wouldn't suggest you do it with a fork, because you can cause a reasonable amount of damage with a fork to the roots. But if you get it with a spade and get under there and sort of dig it out, you're going to create less sort of damage, I think, to the roots than you with a spade than you would do with a fork. And then try and move it with as much soil as you possibly can do. And the following year, don't crop from the rhubarb. What I suggest you do is move it, just let it grow and let all the guns go back into the roots, let it get its roots back into the ground, and then the following year you can then crop from it. Whilst you're actually moving it, what you can do is separate it. So if you've got like a root ball and you've got 3 or 4 eyes coming out, you know, the top part, the shoot if you like, what you can do is with a spade just chop straight through and chop it into sections, leaving at least 1 eye on each obviously, and then sort of plant those out, sort of spread them out, probably about 2 or 3 foot apart, to give it plenty of room to grow. And then you'll find that, you know, again next year don't crop it, just let it grow and die back, and then the following year you can then have you know, so that, you know, you can then start to crop from the rhubarb. Next tip comes from Linda Penny, and she was saying about what do I do about cleaning tools and greenhouse and stuff during the winter. Tools wise, all of my tools are the ones that got wooden handles are actually varnished, so I don't typically do anything with those. What I would suggest is all of your tools, store them in a shed, don't store them outside, because over the winter the wind and the rain and the weather will get in there and potentially damage the tools. So what I would suggest you do, what I actually do is store mine in my chicken hut, to be honest with you, because in there it's nice and dry, and you know they'll store well in there. If you have got tools with wooden handles on and they're not treated in any way, what I would suggest you do is put some linseed oil on there, and that will basically protect the wood and stop it from sort of drying out and getting too split and stuff. And also if water gets on then it'll run off rather than soaking in. So but most certainly your tools, look after your tools and they'll look after you, basically is the motto I always live by. So I always put the tools away in the shed. I typically don't clean them. Obviously cutting type tools, what I always tend to do is sharpen them, and then as I've shown you in the past, sharpen them on the either with an angle grinder or on the bench grinder, and get them nice and sharp, and then oil the blades just to stop them from rusting again where you've we've sharpened them. The other thing you can do is heat the blade up and then quench the blade, which will bring the carbon to the surface in the iron, and then it'll stop that from rusting as much. But typically just a little bit of oil on there, or you know, also look after them. Next one comes from Terry King, and he was saying, comment after me doing the wormery last week. He was saying, have you noticed that the tea or the juice coming from the wormery, has it got any lighter? I haven't noticed mine getting any lighter, but most certainly we had a frost quite badly last night, and we had about 2 inches of snow, so it has got a reasonable sort of quieter, you know, sort of cooler now. So I'm expecting the wormery to start slowing down for a bit now. But no, I haven't noticed any difference yet. But I will expect it to get sort of paler, you know, as the time goes on. So basically, I'm now sort of storing the liquid away, the tea away, and I'm expecting the wormery to slow down in the next few weeks, to be honest with you. The last comment comes from Brian Hubbury, and he was saying about the coffee. And you have actually touched on something that I was thinking about, actually. Because coffee's rich in nitrogen, and there are other things like ash and things like that that are rich in potassium and potash and stuff like that. What I was thinking was mixing coffee with other things. I haven't quite got my head around it yet. I'm trying to think of free ingredients. Obviously, coffee's free. That's high in nitrogen. Ash is free. And what I was thinking of doing was mixing it up and making an all-round fertiliser. So what I'm going to do is have a think about that over the next few weeks, and then I'll let you know what I've come up with. But it's likely to be a mixture of coffee, ash, and something else. I'm not quite sure yet. I'll come back to you on that one. But those are the comments for this week. Sorry, coming back to Linda's question, she was asking me about what I do with the greenhouse. Depends on what's in the greenhouse. What you don't want to do I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place. It's quite windy up here. Last week it was incredibly windy, and last night was most certainly windy. So I don't like to leave the windows open on the greenhouse. But the reverse side of that is, if I don't have some ventilation in the greenhouse, you can get sort of mildew and mould and stuff forming in here. So what I like to do is only water the plants sort of minimum amount during the winter, because obviously when it freezes, the water that you water them with will form into crystals and damage the roots. So I'm obviously watering the least amount as I can. But what I normally do is I leave the door shut, and I leave the windows literally just an inch or so open, just to get a little bit of ventilation. But if it is windy, I don't get too much too much draft in the greenhouse, because what you need to be careful of is if you're in an exposed position like mine is here, if the wind does pick up and you get a pressure differential between the inside of the greenhouse and the outside, when you get gusts of wind and stuff like that, that's when you can get the windows blown out. So I always try to sort of keep the windows shut as much as I can do. But what I normally do is just leave them a little bit open, about an inch or so. And I've got 2 vents at the bottom here. I'll typically leave those out as well, so I do get airflow through the bottom and through the top, so that'll sort of circulate the air around, if you like. But that's basically what I do in the winter for the greenhouse. So I hope this episode has been of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions that you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And thank you to all of the new subscribers and all of the comments that you put on the channel. I do appreciate all your support, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Little Garden.